My name is Angela. I'm 40 years old, and if there's one thing I've always valued, it's family. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Atlanta, where my parents taught me that love and respect were the pillars of any relationship. Life wasn't easy. We didn't have much money, and I had to start working at 15 to help with bills. But through all the difficulties, we stuck together. That's why what happened recently shook me so deeply. It wasn't just about being excluded from something important. It was about realizing that the very meaning of family could be questioned. I was in my kitchen, late afternoon, finishing up some chores after work. The smell of coffee still lingered in the air, and the sunlight was filtering through the blinds, painting stripes across the counter. I had my sleeves rolled up, my phone on the table, when the message came through. "Can we stop by for a few minutes?" It was from Monica, my son's girlfriend, or at least, that's how I still thought of her. I remember smiling, imagining maybe they were finally going to announce an engagement. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on a towel and went to answer. There they were, my son Daniel, tall and restless like always, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, and Monica, with her perfectly styled hair and the kind of calm expression that always made me feel a little out of place, as though she carried secrets I wasn't meant to know. We sat in the living room. I poured them some iced tea, the kind Daniel always loved since he was a kid. My heart felt light. I was waiting for that big announcement. Then Monica leaned back against the sofa, crossed her legs neatly, and with the most casual tone said, "We got married yesterday." At first, I thought I had misheard. I blinked, tilted my head slightly, and repeated, "I'm sorry, what?" She smiled, almost politely, and repeated, "We got married yesterday. It was just the two of us at the courthouse." I felt the air leave my lungs. My eyes darted to Daniel, searching for some kind of explanation, some sign that this was a joke, or that there was a misunderstanding. But he just looked down, his hands fidgeting, avoiding my gaze. "Married?" I finally managed to say. "And I wasn't even told? I wasn't there?" Daniel finally looked up, his voice low, almost offensive. "Mom, we just wanted to keep it simple. No big event, no stress. It was our decision." I could feel the sting behind my eyes, that familiar burn when tears threaten to fall, but pride keeps them from spilling. I pressed my lips together, trying to breathe. My son, my only child, had gotten married, and I hadn't even been given the chance to witness it, let alone celebrate it. "A wedding isn't just about the two of you," I said, my voice trembling despite my best effort to keep it steady. "It's about family. It's about unity. How could you not even tell me?" Monica's tone was firm, almost rehearsed. "We wanted it private. We didn't want drama or pressure. We'll celebrate later, maybe throw a party. But the marriage part, that was just for us." The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, cut deeper than she probably realized. I wasn't angry about missing a party. I was devastated about missing the moment. Watching your child commit to someone is a milestone, something you carry in your heart forever. I felt robbed. The room grew tense. Silence stretched between us, only broken by the ticking of the clock on the wall. I forced myself to look at Daniel again. His face was tight, as though he was bracing himself against a storm. "Daniel, you know how much I've dreamed of that day. After everything we've been through, I thought I would stand beside you, that I would see you start that new chapter. Do you realize what you've taken from me?" His eyes softened for a second, guilt flickering there, but then he shook his head. "Mom, it's not about you. It's about us. And we wanted it this way." That sentence was a dagger. "Not about you." I sat there holding my breath, realizing that maybe for the first time in his adult life, Daniel was choosing to put someone else's wishes before mine. I knew that was part of growing up, of becoming a man. But why did it have to come at such a cost? Why did it feel like erasing me from his happiness? I leaned back against the couch, staring at them both, my mind flooded with memories. Holding Daniel as a baby, walking him to school on rainy mornings, waiting up late when he stayed out too long as a teenager. I had given him everything I had, every ounce of energy, every piece of myself. And now, when it mattered most, I was invisible. "Congratulations," I whispered finally, the word almost bitter in my mouth. "I hope it's everything you wanted." Monica gave me a polite smile, as if my blessing was just a formality. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't argue. They stayed a little longer, making small talk that felt forced and shallow, then got up to leave. Daniel hugged me, brief and tight, his scent still familiar. When the door closed behind them, I stood frozen for a moment. The house felt emptier than ever. I walked slowly back to the kitchen, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor. The iced tea glasses were still on the table, condensation dripping down, forgotten. I sat at the counter, placed my face in my hands, and let the tears fall. I wasn't crying just because I missed a wedding. I was crying because I realized something fundamental had shifted. My son wasn't mine anymore, not the way he used to be. He belonged to someone else now, someone who didn't think I needed to be part of their beginning. The next day at work, I could barely concentrate. I'm a medical secretary at a small clinic, and usually the rhythm of answering phones, filing papers, and greeting patients keeps my mind busy. But that day, every good morning felt heavy, every smile forced. A coworker, Brenda, noticed my distraction. "You okay, Angela?" she asked gently, sliding a stack of folders onto my desk. I forced a smile. "Just tired." But the truth was, I was anything but tired. I was restless. My heart was racing, my mind replaying the words. "We got married yesterday," over and over like a cruel echo. That evening, I tried to call Daniel. He didn't pick up. Hours later, he sent a short message. "Busy. We'll call you tomorrow." But tomorrow came and went, and no call. I wanted to respect his new life, to give him space, but the hurt was raw, and silence only deepened it. Every time I thought about Monica's calm, almost detached way of delivering the news, I felt the wound reopen. I wasn't just excluded, I was dismissed. That night, as I sat alone in my living room, I promised myself something. I would not let this break me. Yes, I was hurt, humiliated even, but I wasn't going to disappear quietly. If I had been pushed to the sidelines, I would find a way back, not with anger, but with strength. Because one thing I knew for sure, I had been there for Daniel every step of his life, and no matter what choices he made now, no matter how Monica tried to redraw the lines, I was still his mother, and mothers don't give up that easily. The morning after that conversation, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The air in the house felt heavier, as though even the walls knew something had shifted. My routine was the same, coffee brewing, radio humming softly in the background, but nothing about me was the same. I kept replaying Monica's voice in my head, that calm and detached tone when she said, "We got married yesterday." It sounded less like a celebration and more like a statement of fact, stripped of emotion. I sat at the kitchen table with my mug of coffee, staring at the steam rising, and thought about how invisible I had felt in that moment. 40 years old, and still learning that people you love the most can leave you out of their happiest days. I wondered if maybe I had done something to deserve it. Had I been too controlling as a mother? Too protective? Too vocal about my doubts regarding Monica? My chest tightened as those thoughts circled. Around mid-morning, I decided I needed fresh air. Atlanta was cooling down with the fall season, and the crisp breeze felt like a relief as I walked down my street. The houses, with their tidy lawns and pumpkins already sitting on porches, looked picture-perfect. Neighbors waved as they trimmed hedges or carried groceries, but I barely lifted my hand to wave back. I felt like a ghost drifting through my own neighborhood. By the time I returned home, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Can we talk later this week? Monica and I are busy with some things right now." The word stung. Busy. Too busy to call your own mother after making a life-changing decision. Too busy to let me process the fact that I had been excluded. I didn't reply right away. I needed time to figure out what I wanted to say, because if I let the hurt speak for me, I knew I'd regret it. That evening, Brenda called. She's been my closest friend at work for years, the kind of woman who doesn't sugarcoat things, but also knows how to listen. Her voice was warm. "Angela, you sounded off yesterday. What's going on?" she asked. I hesitated, then sighed. "Daniel got married." There was a pause on the line. "Married? Well, congratulations are in order. When was the wedding?" I swallowed hard. "Yesterday, at the courthouse. I didn't even know about it until after." Her gasp was sharp. "Wait, he didn't tell you? You weren't there?" "No," I whispered. "They did it without me, without anyone." Brenda's tone shifted, her voice a mix of disbelief and outrage. "Angela, that's not right. That boy knows better. After everything you've done for him, raising him on your own, working 2 jobs when he was in school, he knows better." Her words echoed the ache in my chest, validating what I had been too ashamed to admit. I wasn't just hurt, I felt betrayed. "I don't even know how to process it," I confessed. "I want to be happy for him, I really do, but I feel like I've been erased." Brenda sighed deeply. "You're allowed to feel that way. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But Angela, don't let this turn you bitter. You've always been stronger than that. You hear me? Her reminder of my strength steadied me, even if just for a moment. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet again, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Later that week, Daniel finally called. His voice was cautious, almost formal, as though he was bracing himself for a confrontation. "Hey, Mom," and I closed my eyes at the sound of his voice, memories rushing back. His laughter as a child, the way he used to run into my arms after school. "Hi, Daniel." There was a pause. "I know you're upset. Upset doesn't even begin to cover it," I said softly, trying to keep my voice from cracking. "You got married, Daniel. Married. And I wasn't there. Do you know what that feels like for me?" He sighed. "Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. We wanted it simple. Monica doesn't like big events. And honestly, I didn't want all the stress of planning something huge. We thought it would be easier this way." I gripped the phone tighter. Easier for who? Because for me, this wasn't easy at all. This was devastating. His voice grew firmer. It was our decision. We didn't owe anyone an explanation. That word again, our. It was as if I had been pushed out of the picture entirely, replaced by this new unit he and Monica had formed. "Daniel," I said, my voice trembling, "I have always been there for you. Every scraped knee, every heartbreak, every dream you chased, I stood beside you. And when it was finally your turn to step into the biggest moment of your life, you shut me out. Do you understand how much that hurts?" There was silence on the line. I thought maybe he was reflecting, but when he finally spoke, his tone was distant. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's done." The finality of those words sliced through me. It's done. As though my pain was irrelevant, as though my role in his life had ended the moment he signed those papers. After the call ended, I sat in the dark with tears streaming down my face. I wasn't just mourning the wedding I had missed. I was mourning the closeness I feared I'd never get back. The days that followed were heavy. At work, I forced myself to focus, but every break was spent scrolling through my phone, half expecting to see a photo of them posted somewhere, smiling, rings glinting, while I sat on the outside looking in. One afternoon, as I was leaving the clinic, I ran into Mrs. Thompson, a woman from my church. She smiled warmly and asked, "How's Daniel? Any news about when he and Monica are getting married?" The question was a knife to the gut. I forced a smile, my throat tightening. "They already did. Last week." Her eyes widened. "Oh, I didn't hear anything about it. I thought you'd have a big celebration." I nodded quickly, pretending I was in a rush, and hurried to my car before she could ask more. The humiliation burned. It wasn't just that I hadn't been invited. It was that everyone assumed I would have been. Explaining otherwise felt like exposing a wound over and over again. That night, I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept replaying not just the wedding I missed, but the way Monica had delivered the news, almost with satisfaction. Was it intentional? Was excluding me her way of making a point? A quiet anger began to stir beneath the hurt. For years, I had tried to accept Monica, even when her coldness made me uncomfortable. I had told myself she was just reserved, just different. But now I wondered if she had always been drawing a line, pushing me further from Daniel until finally, I was left outside the door entirely. I whispered to myself in the dark, "This isn't over." Not in the sense of undoing their marriage. No, that wasn't my place. But in the sense of reclaiming my dignity, of refusing to let myself be sidelined in my own son's life. Because while Monica may have become his wife, I was still his mother, and mothers don't just disappear. The following weekend, I gathered the courage to visit Daniel and Monica at their apartment. I didn't want to seem desperate, but I also couldn't keep sitting in my house, drowning in silence and unanswered questions. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I drove across town, rehearsing in my head what I might say. Would I confront them? Would I pretend everything was fine? I didn't know. Their building was modern, with glass panels and a polished lobby that always felt too impersonal to me. As I pressed the elevator button, I reminded myself to stay calm. By the time I reached their floor, my palms were damp. When Daniel opened the door, his surprise was obvious. "Mom, I didn't know you were coming." I forced a small smile. "I thought I'd drop by. I wanted to see you." He hesitated, then stepped aside. Monica was in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the couch with her laptop. She looked up briefly, her expression polite but cool. "Hello, Angela." I nodded back. "Hi, Monica." The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. I took a seat in an armchair while Daniel sat on the edge of the sofa, close to her. The sight made my chest ache. My son, once so attached to me, now anchored to someone else. I just wanted to talk, I began carefully. I need to understand why you two felt it was right to get married without me there. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. Mom, we've been over this. We didn't want a big deal made of it. I'm not asking for a big deal, I said softly. I'm asking for respect, for acknowledgement. Do you realize how humiliating it's been? People keep asking me when the wedding will be, and I have to tell them it already happened, without me. Monica closed her laptop slowly, her voice calm, almost too calm. Angela, I think you're making this about yourself. We love each other, and that's what matters. The way we chose to start our marriage doesn't diminish that. Her words stung, though her tone remained steady. I clenched my hands together to keep from snapping. Monica, with all due respect, marriage isn't just about two people. It's about joining families. I should have been there. Daniel exhaled sharply, as if frustrated. Mom, please, we didn't do this to hurt you. We just wanted something simple, private, that's all. But you did hurt me, I said, my voice breaking, more than you realize. For a moment, silence filled the room. Daniel avoided my eyes, and Monica's gaze was steady, unflinching. I wondered if she felt any remorse at all. I stood slowly, smoothing my skirt. I'm not here to fight. I just needed you both to hear me. I love you, Daniel, and I want to support your marriage, but I can't pretend this didn't wound me deeply. Daniel finally looked at me, his eyes softer, conflicted. I know, Mom. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I left their apartment with a heavy heart. The elevator ride down felt endless, and when I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face like a slap. I sat in my car for several minutes before starting the engine, trying to steady my breathing. Back home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table. My phone buzzed with a message from Brenda. How did it go? I typed back, not great, but at least I said what I needed to say. She responded quickly. Good. Don't let them silence you. You matter, Angela. Her words gave me a flicker of comfort. The days passed, and though Daniel sent me short texts here and there, hope you're doing well, Mom, things felt strained. I tried to focus on work, church, and small joys like tending to my garden, but the wound was always there, lingering beneath the surface. One Sunday after service, Pastor Williams approached me. He's known me for years, always quick with encouragement. Angela, you've seemed a little down lately. Everything all right? I hesitated, then admitted quietly. Daniel got married. I wasn't there. His brows furrowed. I'm sorry to hear that, but remember, Angela, love is patient. Sometimes when people shut us out, it's more about their own fears than about us. Don't give up on him. His words stayed with me as I drove home. Love is patient. Still, patience didn't erase the ache. One evening I received an invitation from Monica. It was for a small gathering at their place, a celebration dinner of sorts. Part of me bristled at the thought of being included only after the fact, but another part of me longed to be there, to reclaim some space in Daniel's life. When the evening arrived, I dressed carefully. A deep blue blouse, slacks, a pair of earrings Daniel had given me years ago. I wanted to look composed, even if my heart was fragile. Their apartment buzzed with conversation when I arrived. A few of Daniel's friends were there, along with Monica's family. Laughter filled the space, and for a moment, I felt like an intruder stepping into someone else's celebration. Daniel hugged me briefly. Glad you came, Mom. I smiled faintly. Wouldn't miss it. Throughout the night, I sat at the dining table, making polite conversation. Monica's parents were kind, asking me about my work, about my hobbies. But beneath it all, I felt the weight of being the outsider. Everyone else seemed seamlessly woven into this moment, while I was stitching myself in from the margins. At one point, I slipped into the kitchen for a glass of water, needing a break from the noise. Daniel followed me, leaning against the counter. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded, though my throat was tight. I'm fine. Just taking it all in. He studied me for a moment, his expression softer than it had been in weeks. I know this hasn't been easy, but I hope you can accept us. I need you in my life, Mom. I don't want us to be distant. Tears pricked my eyes. I want that too, Daniel, more than anything, but it hurt to be left out. I need you to understand that. He reached out and squeezed my hand briefly. I do. I'm sorry. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was the first time I truly believed he meant it. Later that night, as I drove home, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness, yes, but also a glimmer of hope. Maybe the path forward wouldn't be easy, but perhaps it wasn't completely closed. Because despite everything, one truth remained. Daniel was my son, and no matter how much Monica tried to stand between us, nothing could erase that bond entirely. The following week felt like walking on eggshells. Daniel called me once, a quick check-in about how work was going, but the conversation was brief, and I could sense Monica's presence in the background. He spoke softly, almost cautiously, as if careful about what he shared. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet house, staring at the phone. My home had always been filled with his voice, his laughter, his footsteps. Now it felt like a museum of memories. On Thursday evening, Brenda invited me over. She insisted I needed a night away from my own thoughts. I agreed, grateful for the distraction. At her place, the smell of roasted chicken filled the air, and Motown played softly from her old speakers. She poured me a glass of wine and gave me that look, the one that told me she already knew something was weighing on me. "So," she began, settling into the couch, "how was the little dinner they hosted?" I sighed. It was fine. I smiled, I talked, but the whole time I felt like I didn't belong, like I was invited just to avoid gossip, not because they truly wanted me there. Brenda shook her head. "Girl, don't let them make you feel small. You raised that boy. You were there when nobody else was. Monica may be his wife, but she can't erase the years you put in." Her words gave me comfort, but also stirred up the ache. I just don't understand why Monica seems so determined to keep me at a distance. I never gave her a reason to dislike me. I tried. "Maybe that's the problem," Brenda said thoughtfully. "Some people, no matter how kind you are, they see you as competition for influence. And instead of embracing you, they push you out." I frowned, letting that sink in. Competition? I'm not competing with her. I just want to be part of Daniel's life. I know that. You know that. But does she? Brenda's eyes held mine. "Angela, you have to decide something. Are you going to let Monica dictate how much space you have in your son's life, or are you going to stand firm in your role as his mother?" The question lingered long after I drove home that night. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, replaying Brenda's words. Stand firm. The truth was, I had been shrinking back, afraid of upsetting Daniel, afraid of seeming demanding, but maybe that had only given Monica more room to edge me out. 2 days later, I decided to take action. Not aggressive, not confrontational, just present. I baked Daniel's favorite pie, sweet potato with cinnamon, and drove to their apartment. I didn't call ahead. I figured if I kept waiting for an invitation, I'd never go. When Daniel opened the door, surprise flickered across his face, but then he smiled. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I lifted the pie with a small smile. "I thought you might like this." He stepped aside quickly. "Of course. Come in." The apartment smelled faintly of fresh paint and lavender candles. Monica was in the kitchen, her hands busy chopping vegetables. She looked up, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Angela." "Hi, Monica," I said evenly, setting the pie on the counter. Daniel peeked at it eagerly. "Sweet potato? You remembered?" I chuckled softly. "Of course I remembered. It's your favorite." For a while, the atmosphere was civil. Monica kept cooking. Daniel chatted about work, and I listened, soaking in the sound of his voice. But the tension never fully left. I could feel Monica's eyes on me occasionally, as if measuring my presence. At one point, as Daniel left the room to take a phone call, Monica set down her knife and looked at me directly. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "Angela, I need to be honest with you. I know you feel hurt about the wedding, but this is our marriage. Daniel and I need space to build our life together." I met her gaze, steadying my breath. "I understand that. I'm not trying to interfere. I just want to be part of his life. That's all." Her lips curved into a polite smile, but her eyes stayed cold. "As long as that doesn't mean you expect to be involved in every decision. He's not a little boy anymore." The words pierced me. I swallowed hard, choosing not to argue. "I know he's not, but he'll always be my son." Before she could respond, Daniel returned, cheerful, oblivious to the weight of the exchange. "Hey, Mom, remember when you used to make this pie for Thanksgiving? Monica hasn't had your version yet." I smiled faintly, masking the sting. "Well, she's in for a treat then." Dinner went smoothly enough after that, but when I left, my chest was tight. I had looked into Monica's eyes and seen the truth. She didn't just want space. She wanted control, and I wasn't going to let her erase me. Back home, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. The pen scratched across the paper as I poured out my feelings. The betrayal, the humiliation, the quiet rage. But I also wrote about resilience, about refusing to give up. Writing gave me clarity. Over the next weeks, I made a conscious effort to show up without overwhelming Daniel. I invited him to lunch, sent him small texts reminding him I loved him, dropped by occasionally with food. Sometimes he responded warmly, sometimes distantly, but I persisted. Then one evening, as I was washing dishes, my phone rang. It was Daniel. His voice was tired. "Mom, can I come over?" My heart skipped. Of course. Always. When he arrived, he looked drained, his shoulders heavy. He sank onto the couch and rubbed his face. Marriage is harder than I thought. I sat beside him, concern rising. "What's going on?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Monica and we argue a lot. About little things, big things. Sometimes I feel like I can't make her happy." I listened carefully, resisting the urge to say too much. "Marriage takes work, Daniel, but it shouldn't feel like you're losing yourself in the process." He looked at me, his eyes vulnerable, just like when he was a boy. I miss how things used to be, when it was just us. Simple. Tears pricked my eyes, but I held them back. "Daniel, no matter what changes, I'm here. You don't have to lose me just because you got married. You can have both." For the first time in weeks, he leaned against me, resting his head on my shoulder. I wrapped my arm around him, silently thanking God for that moment. As I held my son, I realized this wasn't just about me being excluded from a wedding. It was about a bigger battle, one for my place in his life. And though Monica might see me as a threat, I knew my love wasn't something that could be erased. The weeks that followed brought a strange rhythm. Daniel began stopping by my house more often, sometimes after work, sometimes on weekends. At first, the visits were short, just a cup of coffee, a slice of pie, a chat about his job. But gradually, they grew longer. He would linger, telling me about his frustrations, his dreams, the pressure he felt. I listened, offering advice only when he asked, careful not to overstep. One rainy Saturday afternoon, he sat at the kitchen table, staring into his mug. "Mom, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells at home. Monica gets upset so easily. If I forget something, if I don't do things the way she likes, it turns into an argument." I reached across the table, resting my hand on his. "Marriage isn't about perfection, Daniel. It's about compromise, patience, and respect. But it should never feel like you're constantly failing." He nodded slowly, his eyes clouded. "Sometimes I wonder if we rushed into it, if maybe we should have waited." The honesty in his voice broke me a little. I wanted to tell him that marrying without even including me was a mistake, that maybe his doubts were proof of that. But I held back. This wasn't about me. It was about him, about his heart. Instead, I said softly, "It's normal to have doubts in the beginning, but you have to be honest with her about how you're feeling. Otherwise, resentment will grow." He gave a small, tired smile. "You always know what to say." Moments like that reminded me why I couldn't step away, no matter how Monica felt about me. Daniel still needed me, even if he didn't fully realize it. Not long after, Monica called me unexpectedly. Her voice was clipped but controlled. "Angela, I think we should talk." I was surprised, but I agreed. We met at a small cafe near her office. She arrived in her usual polished way, hair perfectly straightened, blazer crisp, every detail immaculate. I felt plain in comparison, sitting there in my sweater and jeans. She didn't waste time. "I know Daniel's been spending a lot of time with you lately, and I need to be clear. I don't want you interfering in our marriage." Her bluntness made my stomach knot. "Monica, I'm not interfering. I'm his mother. He comes to me because he needs someone to talk to." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "And what do you tell him? That he made a mistake? That I'm not good enough?" I shook my head firmly. "No, I tell him to work on his marriage, to communicate, to be patient. I don't want him unhappy, but I won't turn him away when he needs me." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "I want you to respect boundaries. Daniel is my husband. I should be the one he talks to, not you." I held her gaze, steady. "And he should talk to you. But sometimes, people need their mothers." "That's not something you can change, Monica." Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing more. We finished our coffee in silence, and when we parted, I knew the line between us had only grown deeper. That evening, Daniel called again. "Mom, Thanks for everything. I don't say it enough, but I appreciate you. His words brought tears to my eyes. You don't have to thank me, Daniel. I'll always be here. As weeks turned into months, the cracks in his marriage became harder for him to ignore. He told me about arguments over money, about Monica's criticism, about how isolated he felt. I listened, offering advice when I could, but mostly I gave him the space to unburden himself. Then one night, he arrived at my house with a suitcase. His eyes were red, his face weary. I need a break, he said simply. I ushered him inside, my heart aching for him. As he set the suitcase down, I asked softly, "Do you want to tell me what happened?" He sank onto the couch. We fought again, about stupid things. She said I wasn't good enough for her, that she deserved better. I couldn't stay there tonight. I sat beside him, resting a hand on his back. I'm sorry, baby. You don't deserve to hear that. His shoulders shook slightly, and for the first time in years, I saw tears in his eyes. My strong, independent son, broken down. I tried, Mom, he whispered. I really tried. I hugged him tightly, my own tears falling. I know you did, and that's all you can do. For the next few days, Daniel stayed with me. We cooked together, watched movies like we used to, even laughed a little. It felt like old times, and though I knew it wasn't permanent, I cherished every moment. But eventually, he went back. I need to try again, he told me. I can't give up yet. I respected his decision, even if it worried me. Love, after all, isn't something you walk away from lightly. Still, things between Monica and me remained icy. She barely spoke to me when I saw her, and when she did, her words were laced with tension. I kept my composure, but inside, I burned. She had humiliated me once by cutting me out of the wedding, and now she seemed determined to keep me on the sidelines of Daniel's life. One afternoon, Brenda and I were walking through a local park, leaves crunching under our feet. She listened as I vented about Monica. I don't know what she wants from me, I admitted. I try to stay respectful, but it's never enough. She looks at me like I'm intruding, like I don't belong. Brenda gave me a long look. Angela, you don't need her approval to belong in your son's life. Don't let her dictate your worth. You've been too quiet, too careful. Maybe it's time to stand up for yourself. Her words echoed in my head long after I got home. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been too passive, letting Monica set the rules. That night, I sat by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. My reflection stared back at me, tired, but determined. I whispered to myself, I won't be erased. It was the beginning of a new resolve. If Monica wanted to push me out, she would soon learn that I was not someone who disappeared quietly. Because no matter what, I was Daniel's mother, and that role wasn't negotiable. The first real turning point came one Sunday afternoon. I had just returned from church, still dressed in my navy blue dress, when Daniel called. His voice was tense. Mom, can I come over? I didn't hesitate. Of course, baby. You know the door's always open. He arrived not long after, looking exhausted. His shoulders slumped as he sank onto the couch, his eyes shadowed. I brought him a glass of water and sat across from him, waiting. Finally, he spoke. I don't know how much longer I can do this. Monica and I, it's constant. Every day feels like a fight waiting to happen. My heart clenched. What happened this time? He rubbed his face with his hands. She says I don't make enough money, that I don't try hard enough. She compares me to her co-workers' husbands, men with bigger houses, fancier cars. I feel like no matter what I do, it's not enough. I reached over, touching his arm gently. Daniel, love shouldn't feel like a competition. You give your all. I know you do. If she can't see your worth, that's her blindness, not your failure. His eyes brimmed with unshed tears. Sometimes I wonder if she ever really loved me, or if she just loved the idea of what I could be. I swallowed hard, forcing back the anger that rose in me. I wanted to lash out, to say that I had seen this coming, that marrying her in secrecy was a mistake, but I knew that wouldn't help. What he needed was a safe place, not judgment. Daniel, I said softly, you have to decide what kind of life you want. If this marriage is breaking you down more than building you up, then you need to think carefully about what's next. He looked at me with pain in his eyes. I just don't want to fail. Divorce feels like failure. I shook my head gently. No, baby. Staying in something that destroys your spirit, that's failure. Walking away, if that's what you need, is strength. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he leaned back, closing his eyes, as though letting my words sink in. That evening, after he left, I sat in the quiet, staring at the flicker of a candle on the table. My heart was heavy with fear for him, but also with a quiet determination. Whatever came next, I was going to be his anchor. The tension between Monica and me escalated not long after. She called me one evening, her voice sharp. "Angela, I don't appreciate you putting ideas in Daniel's head." I stiffened. "What ideas?" "You're encouraging him to think about leaving me. He told me what you said." I kept my voice calm, though my pulse raced. "I'm not encouraging him to leave, Monica. I'm encouraging him to think about what's best for his well-being. That's what mothers do." Her voice grew colder. "You're undermining our marriage. If you keep interfering, you're going to push him further away from me. And from you." The threat in her words was clear, and it stung deeply. But I refused to let her intimidate me. "I will always be Daniel's mother. You can't change that, Monica. You can be his wife, but that doesn't erase me." She didn't reply. The line went dead. I sat with the phone in my hand, my chest pounding. For years I had tried to be polite, to smooth things over, to avoid conflict. But now it was obvious. Monica didn't just want space. She wanted dominance, and I wasn't going to surrender. A week later, Daniel invited me to dinner at their apartment. I was hesitant, knowing the tension that lingered, but I went. When I arrived, the atmosphere was thick. Monica greeted me with a forced smile, while Daniel seemed restless. Dinner started off quietly enough: roasted chicken, green beans, cornbread. But halfway through the meal, Monica set down her fork and looked directly at me. "Angela, I think we need to set some boundaries." Daniel looked up, frowning. "Monica," but she continued, her tone firm. "You've been too involved in our personal matters. Daniel and I need to handle things ourselves without outside influence." I took a slow breath, keeping my voice steady. "Monica, I understand that, but Daniel is my son. If he comes to me for support, I will always be there for him. That's not interference. It's love." Her eyes narrowed. "Sometimes love looks a lot like control." Daniel's voice cut in, tense. "Enough. Don't talk to her like that." The room fell silent. Monica's jaw tightened, but she said nothing more. I lowered my gaze to my plate, my heart racing. For the first time, Daniel had openly defended me in front of her. After dinner, as I helped clear the table, Daniel whispered to me, "Thank you for staying calm. I know she can be difficult." I squeezed his hand gently. "You don't have to explain, Daniel. I see what's happening." That night, back at home, I sat in my living room reflecting on everything. The humiliation of being excluded from the wedding, the constant tension with Monica, the quiet suffering in Daniel's eyes. It all formed a picture I couldn't ignore. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Daniel's happiness, his future. And though I couldn't make decisions for him, I could be the steady presence he needed, the one person who wouldn't waver. As I blew out the candle on the table, I whispered into the darkness, "I won't let you go, Daniel. Not to her, not to despair, not to anything. You'll always have me." And for the first time since hearing those devastating words, we got married yesterday. I felt a quiet strength rising in me. The battle wasn't over, but I was no longer afraid to fight for my place. It was early spring when everything began to unravel faster than I expected. The air in Atlanta was warming, flowers were blooming, but inside my heart, a storm was brewing. Daniel had been more withdrawn lately. He still called, still visited when he could, but his voice carried a heaviness that worried me. One evening, as I was folding laundry, my phone rang. Daniel's number flashed across the screen. "Mom?" His voice cracked. My stomach dropped. "Daniel, what is it? What's wrong?" There was a long pause, then he said, "Can I come over? I don't want to talk on the phone." Minutes later, he was at my door, his eyes red, his face pale. He carried no bag this time, just himself, looking broken. I led him to the couch, my heart racing. "Tell me what happened," I urged. He rubbed his temples, his voice low. "Monica, she said she regrets marrying me, that I'm not ambitious enough, not the kind of man she wanted." The words made my chest tighten with rage and sorrow. "Daniel, no one has the right to say that to you. You've worked hard your whole life. You've been nothing but loyal and good." He shook his head. "She says I hold her back, that she deserves more." I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my voice calm. "Daniel, love isn't about what someone deserves. It's about choosing each other, through the highs and the lows. If she can't see your worth, that's her blindness, not your failure." Tears welled in his eyes. I don't know what to do anymore. I pulled him into my arms, holding him like I used to when he was little. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight. Just breathe. Just be here. We sat in silence for a long time, the clock ticking softly in the background. Eventually, he drifted off on the couch, exhaustion overtaking him. I draped a blanket over him and sat nearby, watching my son sleep, my heart aching with both love and fury. The next day, Monica called me. Her voice was sharp, brittle. "Angela, did Daniel spend the night at your place?" "Yes," I answered evenly. "He needed space." Her tone grew colder. "You're making things worse. Every time he runs to you, it undermines us. He needs to work things out with me, not hide at his mother's." I felt heat rise in my chest. "He's not hiding, Monica. He's surviving. And if you treated him with half the kindness he deserves, maybe he wouldn't need to escape." Her gasp was audible, followed by silence. Then she spat. "Stay out of our marriage." I hung up without another word. My hands trembled as I set the phone down, but there was a strange sense of relief, too. For once, I had said exactly what I felt. Days later, Daniel came by again. His face was calmer this time, but tired. "Mom, she's furious you let me stay here." I nodded. "I know. She called me." He winced. "I'm sorry. I didn't want you caught in the middle." I touched his hand gently. "I don't mind being in the middle if it means protecting you. You're my son. That will never change." His eyes softened, gratitude flickering there. "I don't know how this is going to end, but I'm glad I have you." Those words kept me steady, even as the storm around us grew louder. At work, Brenda noticed the strain on my face. Over lunch, she asked, "How bad is it now?" I sighed, stirring my salad without appetite. "Bad. Monica told him she regrets marrying him. He's drowning, Brenda, and she blames me for being his lifeline." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "That woman sounds toxic. She wants to isolate him so she can control him. But Angela, don't you dare back down. Daniel needs you now more than ever." Her words settled deep in my chest. I nodded. "I won't leave him, Brenda. No matter what." Weeks passed, each one heavier than the last. Daniel confided more in me, sharing how Monica criticized him, belittled his efforts, compared him to others. My heart broke each time, but I stayed strong for him. I reminded him of his worth, his goodness, the man I had raised. Then one night, he came again, suitcase in hand. But this time, his voice carried a finality I hadn't heard before. "Mom, I think it's over. I can't do this anymore." I looked at him, my throat tight. "Are you sure?" He nodded slowly. "I've tried everything. I've compromised. I've apologized. I've bent myself into pieces. And it's never enough. I don't think it will ever be enough for her." Tears filled my eyes, but I stayed steady. "Then Daniel, you have to choose yourself. Choose peace. Choose a life where you can breathe." He exhaled, as though releasing years of tension. "I'm scared, Mom, but I think you're right." I hugged him tightly, whispering, "You're not alone. You'll never be alone." The following days were a whirlwind. Papers were drawn, conversations had, tears shed. Monica's anger was fierce, her words cutting, but Daniel stood firm. For the first time, I saw him reclaim his strength, his voice. One evening, after a particularly rough day, he sat at my table, weary but resolute. "Mom, I realized something. All this time, she tried to convince me I wasn't enough, but you've always reminded me I was, and that's what's kept me standing." My heart swelled with both pride and pain. "Daniel, you've always been enough. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise." He smiled faintly, the first genuine smile I'd seen in weeks. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." That night, after he left, I sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet, the air heavy with memories of all the moments that had led us here, the shock of that first announcement, the humiliation of being excluded, the battles with Monica, the tears, the arguments, and now, finally, the truth was clear. I hadn't lost Daniel. In fact, through all of this, I had gotten him back in a way I hadn't expected. Yes, he was hurting. Yes, the road ahead would be difficult. But he was free to heal, free to grow, free to rediscover himself without someone constantly tearing him down. And for the first time since Monica had said those words, "We got married yesterday," I felt something close to peace. Because in the end, love had endured. Not Monica's, not hers that was rooted in control and criticism, but mine, steady, patient, unconditional. The weeks after Daniel's decision to leave Monica were some of the hardest I'd ever watched him endure. He moved back into his apartment alone, the walls stripped of her presence. No candles on the counter, no neatly folded blankets on the couch, No scent of her perfume lingering in the air. The emptiness was heavy, but I could tell he preferred it to the suffocation he'd felt with her. I helped him set things back in order. On a Saturday morning, I showed up with cleaning supplies, groceries, and that motherly determination that had carried us through harder times before. He looked at me with tired eyes when I knocked. "Mom, you didn't have to," he started, but I cut him off with a smile. "Yes, I did. Now move out of the way. I've got work to do." For hours, we scrubbed, rearranged, and cooked. I filled his freezer with meals he could heat up during long work days. I washed his sheets, fluffed the pillows, and placed fresh flowers in a vase on the table. It wasn't just about cleaning. It was about breathing life back into his space, showing him that new beginnings could still feel warm. At one point, as we took a break with glasses of iced tea, Daniel leaned back against the counter. "You always know how to make a place feel like home." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. "That's what moms do." His eyes softened, and he said quietly, "I don't know what I'd do without you." The words melted me. After all the hurt, all the exclusion, all the nights I'd cried alone, hearing that reminded me why I had never given up. But while Daniel was beginning to heal, Monica wasn't going quietly. She called him constantly, sometimes yelling, sometimes begging, sometimes threatening. He told me about the messages she left, long, emotional voicemails that swung from anger to sorrow within seconds. One evening, as we sat in his living room watching the news, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, sighed, and set it face down on the coffee table. "Monica?" I asked softly. He nodded. "I can't keep listening to it. It's like she wants me to feel guilty every second of the day." I placed my hand over his. "Daniel, you don't owe her guilt. You gave everything you could. Sometimes love just isn't enough." His jaw tightened. "I still feel like I failed." I squeezed his hand gently. "No, baby. You didn't fail. You survived something that was tearing you apart. That takes courage." At work, I tried to stay focused, but Brenda could read me like a book. Over lunch one afternoon, she leaned in. "How's Daniel holding up?" I sighed, poking at my salad. "He's trying, but Monica won't let go. She keeps pulling at him, trying to drag him back." Brenda shook her head. "That woman sounds relentless. But Angela, don't forget, this is the moment he needs you most. Don't let him drift." Her words reinforced what I already knew. I wasn't just Daniel's mother. I was his anchor. The confrontation I'd been dreading finally came 2 weeks later. I was leaving the grocery store, arms full of bags, when Monica appeared near the parking lot. She must have been waiting. Her car was parked just a few spaces away. She walked up quickly, her heels clicking against the pavement, her face tense. "Angela, we need to talk." I stiffened but kept my voice even. "I don't think there's much left to say, Monica." Her eyes flashed. "You turned him against me." I shook my head firmly. "No. You did that yourself. Daniel saw who you are, how you treated him. Don't blame me for the choices he made." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "He was mine. He was supposed to build a life with me. And now he's running back to you like a child." I set the grocery bags down carefully on the cart and looked her straight in the eyes. "He's not running back to me. He's reclaiming himself. And if you think belittling him, excluding his family, and trying to control every piece of his life is love, then you never really loved him at all." For a moment, her expression cracked, but she quickly masked it with anger. "You'll regret interfering." I stood tall, my voice steady. "I'll never regret protecting my son." Without another word, she spun on her heel and stalked back to her car. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding, before gathering my groceries and heading home. That night, I told Daniel about the encounter. His face paled. "She had no right to confront you like that." I shrugged softly. "She's angry. She wants someone to blame." He shook his head. "No, she doesn't get to take it out on you. You've done nothing but support me." For the first time, I saw not just my son, but a man drawing boundaries, standing tall. It filled me with pride. As the days went by, Monica's calls lessened. Her presence faded from Daniel's life, like a storm finally passing. He began to smile more, to laugh again. He came over for dinner often, and I savored every moment, every sound of his laughter echoing in my home. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he turned to me. "Mom, I know it's been hard. I know you felt like I shut you out when we got married, but everything I've been through has shown me something." I looked at him. My heart braced. "What's that?" His voice softened. "You're the one person who's never turned your back on me. You've been my constant." and I'll never take that for granted again. Tears welled in my eyes as I reached for his hand. That's all I ever wanted, Daniel. Just to be part of your life. He squeezed my hand gently, his eyes glistening. You'll always be part of it. Always. In that moment, the ache of exclusion, the humiliation of being left out, began to fade. Not because the pain hadn't mattered, but because love had outlasted it. That night, lying in bed, I reflected on everything. From the shock of that first announcement, we got married yesterday, to this moment of quiet reconciliation. The journey had been painful, raw, and humbling. But as I drifted to sleep, I realized something profound. I had been tested, humiliated, even dismissed. Yet in the end, I was still standing. And Daniel had come back to me, not as the little boy who once clung to my hand, but as a man who finally understood the depth of a mother's love, and that was enough. Life slowly began to find its rhythm again. Daniel settled into his apartment, learning how to live alone after months of constant tension. At first, the silence of his place seemed to weigh on him. He admitted that some nights felt unbearably quiet, but over time, I could see the peace in him growing, like a garden finally receiving sunlight after being trapped in the shade. I visited often, sometimes bringing meals, sometimes just sitting with him while we watched TV or talked. Those visits reminded me of when he was younger, when it was just the two of us against the world. Except now, he was a grown man, carrying scars, but also resilience. One evening, as I set down a dish of baked chicken on his table, Daniel looked at me thoughtfully. "Mom, do you think people can change? Like really change?" I paused, taking a seat across from him. "I think people can change if they want to, but most don't. They just show you who they really are over time." He nodded slowly, processing my words. "Sometimes I wonder if I was blind from the start. Maybe Monica was always like this, and I just didn't want to see it." I reached across the table, resting my hand over his. "Don't punish yourself for wanting to see the best in someone. That's not blindness, Daniel, that's love. It takes strength to see the truth when it finally shows itself." His shoulders relaxed, and for the first time, I sensed acceptance in him, not just of Monica's failings, but of his own humanity. Meanwhile, Monica's presence in our lives didn't vanish completely. Every now and then, she sent Daniel messages, some angry, some pleading. He rarely replied. One afternoon, he showed me his phone, an unread message that simply said, "You'll regret this." My stomach tightened, but Daniel shrugged. "I'm done with her games, Mom. She can't hurt me anymore." I admired his strength, but part of me stayed cautious. Monica wasn't someone who let go easily. At work, Brenda remained my confidant. One lunch break, she leaned across the table, her eyes sharp. "So, how's Daniel holding up now that she's out of the picture?" I smiled faintly. "Better. He's calmer, lighter. It's like I have my son back." Brenda grinned. "See? I told you. Sometimes the best justice is watching someone walk away from the person who tried to break them." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Justice, maybe, but it still hurts to see how much he went through." "Yes," Brenda agreed, "but don't forget, you were the one who stood by him through it all. That's something Monica will never be able to take from you." Her words reminded me of the truth I often overlooked. I hadn't just been a bystander in Daniel's pain. I had been his anchor, the steady presence that kept him from drowning. A month later, Daniel invited me to join him at church. He hadn't gone regularly in years, but now, he said, he wanted to find some grounding. Sitting beside him in the pews, hearing him sing quietly, watching him bow his head in prayer, I felt tears prick my eyes. Not because everything was perfect, but because I could see him healing, piece by piece. After the service, he turned to me. "I'm starting to realize I don't have to carry all of this alone. I can let go, Mom. I can move forward." I squeezed his hand, my voice thick with emotion. "Yes, baby, you can, and I'll be right here with you." But healing wasn't just Daniel's journey. I had to face my own wounds, too. The humiliation of being excluded, the years of feeling dismissed, the battle of trying to prove my worth in my son's life. One evening, I sat down with my journal and wrote everything I had carried in my heart. I wrote about the day Monica said, "We got married yesterday." I wrote about the nights I cried alone, the moments I doubted myself, the rage I felt when Monica tried to erase me. And then I wrote about Daniel, about his laughter, his tears, his strength. By the time I finished, the pages were damp with tears, but I felt lighter. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was releasing. One Saturday, Daniel invited me to a cookout with some of his friends. It had been years since I'd joined him in a social setting like that. When I arrived, I was nervous, unsure of how I'd fit in, but Daniel welcomed me warmly, introducing me to everyone. "This is my mom," he said proudly, his arm around my shoulders. "She's the strongest woman I know." The words filled me with a pride I couldn't hide. All the shame and exclusion I'd once felt seemed to fade in that moment. Throughout the afternoon, I laughed. I talked. I felt alive. Watching Daniel joke with his friends, grill burgers, and smile without strain, I realized this was the justice I had been waiting for. Not revenge against Monica, not some grand confrontation, but this, seeing my son happy, free, himself again. That night, as we cleaned up, Daniel turned to me. "Mom, I want you to know something. I don't regret marrying Monica. It taught me a lot. About myself, about what I want, about what I deserve, but I regret how I treated you. Leaving you out, making you feel like you didn't matter, that was wrong, and I'll never forgive myself for it." Tears welled in my eyes. "Daniel, I won't pretend it didn't hurt. It broke me, but you came back. You see me now, and that's enough." He pulled me into a hug, holding me tight. "You'll always matter, Mom. Always." Driving home that evening, I rolled down the window, letting the cool night air wash over me. The city lights blurred around me, but inside, I felt clear. This journey hadn't been about revenge or winning some invisible battle with Monica. It had been about love, the kind that endures humiliation, heartbreak, and loss, yet still stands tall. I realized then that while Monica had tried to silence me, to erase me, she had failed, because in the end, Daniel hadn't chosen her bitterness. He had chosen my love, and that love had carried us through. The final chapter of this storm in our lives didn't arrive with a dramatic explosion. It came with quiet clarity, the kind that settles after a storm when the sky slowly begins to clear. Months had passed since Daniel left Monica, and each day he seemed more himself. He started taking long walks in the evenings, going to the gym again, even picking up old hobbies he had abandoned. I watched as color returned to his face, laughter to his voice, and confidence to his steps. It was as if the boy I had raised had finally re-emerged from the shadows. One Sunday afternoon, he invited me to his apartment for dinner. When I arrived, the place was tidy, candles flickering softly, jazz music playing low in the background. He had cooked, real food, not just the takeout boxes that had cluttered his counter in the early days after Monica. "You did all this?" I asked, impressed as I looked at the spread on the table. He grinned sheepishly. "Well, I had a little help from YouTube, but yes, I wanted to do something for you." We sat down, and for the first time in a long time, I felt no heaviness between us. The conversation flowed easily, from work to memories to dreams of the future. After dessert, Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything. About Monica, about the marriage, about how I handled things." I listened, bracing myself. "I was wrong to shut you out. I thought marrying her was a new beginning, and I thought that meant I had to cut ties with the past. But I see now that I didn't need to erase you to start a new chapter. You've always been part of my foundation. Excluding you was the biggest mistake I ever made." Tears filled my eyes. "Daniel, you broke my heart that day. But hearing you say this, it heals more than you know." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "I'll never do it again. I promise you, you'll always have a place in my life." Not long after, I ran into Monica unexpectedly at the grocery store. She looked thinner, her eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. For the first time, she didn't approach me with sharpness or anger. Instead, she simply nodded and said quietly, "Angela." I nodded back. "Monica." There was no venom, no accusations, just two women who had fought over the same man's heart in different ways. In that moment, I felt something surprising. Pity. She had tried to erase me, to control Daniel, but in the end, she had lost not just the marriage, but herself. As I walked away, I realized I no longer carried anger toward her. She had taken so much from me, but she hadn't won. The justice wasn't in her suffering, it was in my survival, in my son's healing, in the love that had endured. Weeks later, Daniel came over for Sunday dinner at my house. I had cooked a big meal, just like old times: fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, peach cobbler. As we sat at the table, laughter filled the room again. At one point, Daniel set down his fork and looked at me. "You know, Mom, I think I'm finally ready to move forward, to let go of everything with Monica and just Start fresh. I smiled warmly. That's all I've ever wanted for you. Peace. He nodded, his eyes glistening. I wouldn't have made it here without you. My throat tightened. That's what mothers do, Daniel. We hold you up when you can't stand, and we let you go when you're ready to walk again. He reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I'll never forget that. That night, after he left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the stars emerge in the clear Georgia sky. The journey replayed in my mind. The shock of that first announcement, the nights of tears, the battles with Monica, the moments of doubt and strength. And I realized something. Humiliation had been my fire. It had burned me, yes, but it had also refined me. It had shown me the depth of my resilience, the strength of my love, and the unbreakable bond between me and my son. Justice hadn't come in dramatic form. It had come quietly, in the way Daniel now looked at me with gratitude, in the way he leaned on me with trust, in the way he had reclaimed his own life. I whispered into the night, "We made it, baby. We made it through." Months later, Daniel surprised me with something I never expected. He organized a family dinner at a small restaurant. Nothing extravagant, just intimate. As we gathered, he stood up to speak. "I want to say something," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "When I got married, I made the mistake of leaving out the one person who has always been there for me. I hurt her in a way I can never take back. But tonight, I want to make something clear. Mom, you are my family. You always have been, and you always will be, and I'll never let anyone take that place from you again." The room went silent, and all eyes turned to me. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I nodded. Too choked up to speak, Daniel walked over, hugged me tightly, and in that embrace, every wound felt like it was finally closing. Driving home that evening, I thought about how life had unfolded. It hadn't been fair. It hadn't been easy. But in the end, the humiliation had given way to honor. The exclusion had been replaced by recognition, and the pain had been transformed into strength. I was no longer the woman who cried alone in her kitchen, wondering if she mattered. I was the woman whose love had outlasted betrayal, whose resilience had carried her son through his darkest days, and whose place in his life was undeniable. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole.